Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Great to have you with us on the program today. Our website, thisweekinamerica.us. As mentioned on the program, the author of the new book, The Happiness Handbook, Jenn Flaa, is with us on the program today. She is a NASA engineer, author, rocker, serial entrepreneur, and a happy woman, launching her new book called The Happiness Handbook, a user's manual for living your extraordinary life. Jenn, welcome to the program. Great to have you with us.
Hey, Rick. Thanks for having me on.
You get information on Jenn at our website. Her website is happiness-handbook.com. You can get all the information on the book and what we're going to be talking about for the course of the program today. Let's start back 9 years ago. And in the book, you talk about you not only realized at that point in your life that you were not happy, you referred to yourself as a broken person. Let's talk a little bit about where you were 9 years ago, where you are today, and how you got to this point where you're not only happy, you're telling other people how to be happy.
Yeah, so 9 years ago, I was about 70 pounds heavier. My marriage was ending. I thought I was going to lose my home in the divorce. The dot-com bust was in full swing, and I thought I was going to lose my company. So I was just a mess of tears on the floor. And I decided I didn't like it like that, and that what I needed to do was figure out how to get happy again and how to sustain it. And I approached it like an engineer would and, assessed the problem and looked at different solutions and experimented. And I found some stuff that worked for me. And then being that I'm in high tech and I'm a musician, I'm surrounded by men. So they noticed this drastic change. And they're like, what did you do? You got to write a book. We want to make our girls happy. And that's how the book evolved out of my little journey.
The book is called The Happiness Handbook, and actually you say if you were to give somebody an owner's manual that they could pass out to people that they develop relationships with, this would be it, because there are a lot of great stories in the book, a lot of your experimentation, things that you found that work. There are worksheets in here. You can do it with someone you're in a relationship with. And it's very easy to sit down and to read and to, and if you think, okay, I'm going to have half the book and Jen's going to talk about her problems, you really don't do that. You say basically your life, you were born, crap happened, and you moved on.
Yeah, I didn't think it was worth getting into what all the crap was. We've all got it. We know what that means.
Well, yeah, and we all have that. It's like, okay, we're all starting from the same place and we're going to go forward. How difficult was it for you to learn what made you happy?
Problem was remembering, because once you hit that middle part of your life and you're so busy, for me, and I know especially for a lot of other women, you are so busy making other people happy, making other people lunch,
right,
make people at work happy, keeping your yard and your house up. There's just so much to do that for me, I forgot what made me happy, and I kind of forgot how to take care of myself.
I mentioned in the beginning that you say that about 70% of people feel that when they think about it, they really aren't happy. Do many of us go through life and really don't even realize we're not happy? Like you said, we just get caught up in life and go forward and don't pay a lot of attention to ourselves.
I think so. I was definitely there when I was married. I feel bad for my ex-husband now. I learned so much after the divorce about what I did wrong during the marriage. And a lot of it was about being happy. Because I forgot how to be happy and what made me happy, I didn't know how to communicate that. And then when I did communicate it, I didn't really know how to effectively communicate it in a language that guys get. And then when he finally did things that did make me happy, like most women, I was like, oh, honey, thank you very much. But men, you can probably concur with this, are very visual for the most part. And so, oh, thank you doesn't register as much as a woman going, oh, wow, doing a little happy dance.
Well, yes. And you said that you really didn't realize even when you were happy, you really weren't expressing it. And that's a big part of what you feel makes you happy. Is it being able to express that properly?
I think so. The more I experimented with happiness, allowing happiness to reside in my body and have it, eke out in little ways, it feels really good. So it's much more enjoyable being happy than not being happy.
Some of the tips you talk about in the book is The Happiness Handbook by Jenn Flaa, our guest on This Week in America. Jen's website is happiness-handbook.com. You can link onto our website and get all that information, thisweekinamerica.us. The book's available at Amazon. It was a number one seller in the new releases program on Amazon. It's an excellent book. It's very easy to read. A lot of things that you can do, questions you can ask yourself, worksheets that you can fill out. And one story in there that I think really puts a lot of this in perspective is you talk about an old Native American story that was told to you once. And we all have these conflictions going on inside us. Talk about that story and maybe how much our mind actually plays in making us happy.
So the story goes like this. There's a grandfather and his grandchild are talking, and the grandfather's describing how there's two wolves that live inside of him. And one of the wolves is happy and compassionate and loving, and the other one is angry and caught up in his stuff and mean. And the little grandchild's like, oh my gosh, do they fight? And the old grandpa's like, oh yeah, they fight. And the grandchild's like, oh no, which one's gonna win? And the grandfather says, whichever one I feed. I just thought that was brilliant, and it brings to mind for me how important my thoughts are in my daily life. So when I find myself in those moments of ar, 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 ar,
Yes, we all go through those.
I'm feeding the mean wolf. And so I like to flip that switch over and think about things that are happy and peaceful and content that feed the other wolf.
You talk in the book about things, you give us tips that will actually make you happy. And one you start with, and some people would go, is this really right? You say, think selfishly. Explain what you mean by that and why that works.
When I was first writing the book, I asked a lot of people about, what makes them happy, and I tested out several sections on them. And several people, especially a certain family member of mine, were like, oh no, I don't need anybody to do anything to be happy. What makes me happy is when I cook for you, or I clean for you, or I do this or that for you. But that confused me, because then there's nothing I can do to make that person happy except take. And I didn't like that. And it also felt, from experience with this family member, that they were putting themselves in a position of being a martyr. So what I would like to encourage people to do is think about it like this. For the most part, we all want people that we love to be healthy and happy. But if we know what makes them happy, then we can do that. We can provide those things for them. And then when we see, because their face lights up, or they do a happy dance, or they do a kind of a receiving moment, then we can see we actually succeeded at making them happy. But if you never figure out what makes you happy, and you never tell people what makes you happy, you don't give them back that moment of, oh, I succeeded. I made my sweetie or my mom or my kid happy. So I think that's what I mean about being selfish, allowing other people to do things that make you happy.
Well, you talk about the 3 steps of happiness: decide, communicate, and happy dance. And I guess a lot of this comes down to what that age-old challenge, communication in a relationship. You really need to be able to listen. You really need to be able to express yourself.
Yeah, the biggest tip I've got, and this is straight from my guy friends, they said, for the most part, men are single-focused, which means they can do one verb at a time. So if they're watching TV, which, ladies to guys, a lot of times that's the same thing for them as a bubble bath is for us. But they're watching, they're not listening to us. So their tip on communication is wait until they're done with a verb, and then they're in the listening mode. Like, think back to when you were dating, or if you are dating, the beginnings of the datings. When you're sitting at a table having dinner and gazing into each other's eyes, that's listening. So when you've got that kind of focused attention, that's when you say, hey, honey, you know what would make me really happy? if you take out the garbage, flowers or whatever it is, that's the time when you've got their undivided attention.
You're listening to This Week in America. Our guest on the program is Jenn Flaa. That's Flaa. She's the author of the Happiness Handbook, a user's manual for living your extraordinary life. Her website is happiness-handbook.com. The book is available at Amazon. Information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us, so you can log on and then link on to Jenn's website. The nice thing, Jenn, as you say, basically all guys are hardwired to make women happy.
I think all healthy guys are.
Yeah, okay.
And that is amazing. And if we can, as women, if we can realize that guys want to make us happy, and then if we make it easy for them, like the book is kind of like a playbook in sports. You write down the things that make you happy and you have conversations with them about it. And then when they do it and you do that step 3, the happy dance, then they know they won. So, and sometimes there's scoring involved too.
Well, yeah, you've got a chapter in there, and guys are going, yeah, I know what makes her happy. And you've got that chapter in there, the sex chapter. But the one thing that's interesting is you talk about the perfect after. Is that something where we fall down, that once we get to the after part, we're really not as responsive as you would like us to be?
I think that's for every woman to answer for themselves.
Okay.
But some guys afterwards, we've worn them out and they're just pooped out. And sometimes women need to have that little bit of cuddle or a little bit of conversation. But the important part there is the communicating what you need. And maybe you don't need the cuddle every time. Maybe you need it once a week. But those are things that are important for you as a person to know and then communicate them with your sweetie.
Well, and that's where the book comes in handy, because you're asking these questions. And if you do this with someone that you're in a relationship with, maybe for the first time in that relationship, you're actually sharing your thoughts.
Yeah. So here's a tip that worked for me and my sweetie. We started out doing the book together, and we drew a line down the middle of the worksheets, and so my happy stuff goes on one side and his on the other. And we'd start at the beginning and did like the top 5 things that make us happy, or what I would like you to do when I'm upset and it's not about you. We did some of that, but then we skipped ahead to the sex section, and we did a little bit of that, and then we adjourned and came back another day to do more of the book.
You can always skip ahead. That's a nice thing. It doesn't have to necessarily be done sequentially. You can go to the good parts and then come back and pick up those later. And if you're thinking, does that really work in a guy, talking about being hardwired to make a woman happy? You got a great story in there about a construction worker, and a comment he made. He was working for a female, and tell the story, because this really, if we're concerned that, okay, does this really work? In this case, it really worked.
I was really surprised by this, and it really opened up a little bit of a insight into men's psyche for me. So I was having some work done on my patio and had a bunch of workers there. I'm a manager. I'm used to managing men in high tech, and no one had ever said this to me, that when the job was done. So the job was done, or for that day, they made great improvement, and they called me out to have me look, and this gentleman looks at the work and says, "Did I make you happy?" And I was taken aback. It wasn't like, "Do you like it? How is it?"
Right.
It was, "Did my work make you happy?" And of course he was doing it for the money, but he was also doing it for the happiness that having this new beautiful patio would provide for me. And I just thought that was an amazing way to look at things.
In fact, I think he said, "Your smile gives me energy." And I'm thinking about that. And it's like, we all like to see women in our lives, whether it's an employer-employee relationship, or it's a dating relationship, or it's your spouse. We like to feel like they're happy with something we've done for them, or just being with us.
Yeah, when you look around, especially when you hit that middle part of your life and you look at different men with their women, a lot of guys get into this place where they're walking on eggshells in order to make somebody happy. They're worried about anything they say or do might, bring out the "er." But if we turn that around for our guys and empower them by communicating clearly what makes us happy, and then sparkling or smiling, doing the happy dance when they get it right, then this eggshell business goes away. And I just love hanging out with guys who are empowered and happy to make me happy rather than guys who are worried about pissing me off.
It's interesting. I've got about a minute left in the program. I want to hit two things. First of all, you say this is a process. Don't expect that your life is going to change in a matter of, 48 hours. This is a process.
Yeah, and it's a grand experiment. So one of the safest things you can do is go experiment on the checkout guy at the counter, or the guy who, hands you the meat at the meat counter, somebody, the waiter who comes to your table and brings you your dinner. Experiment on that level and see how your smiling and being happy to receive lights up complete strangers, and then give it a shot on your loved ones, and see how it goes for them and how it makes you feel.
Well, and that was sort of the part two I was going to end with. It's not just working on someone you're in a relationship with, that a social relationship. You use this in other relationships, and you're talking about, if you're out somewhere eating and suddenly the waiter sees a smiling face, that's got to make him feel better about himself and the job that he's doing. It's
so much more fun to live in a way where you're happy, your energy is kind of sparkling off of you. This responses that you get from strangers is much more fun than when you go to the grocery store and you see people in their carts and they're just like, it's a much funner way to live. So I really encourage experimenting.
Did you think 9 years ago that someday you'd be writing a book that's doing exceptionally well, as I mentioned, around the country, and have a smile on your face, what looks like probably about 24 hours a day, and telling people how to turn their lives around by finding happiness?
I didn't. And my big conundrum during that time was trying to envision being happy and peaceful and content and not disappointed and angry, because I hadn't had enough of that in my life. So here I was confused with, how do I even envision and ask for something in my life that I don't even know really exists, and I've never had real experience with it. I just had to set out into the unknown and take little baby steps along the way. So, finally, 9 years later, ta-da.
This is where you are. The book is The Happiness Handbook. I have to ask you one other question, because I mentioned you were a rocker. You've got a group that you're with, Urban Fiction. What did this whole process of happiness do to you in terms of being a creative person? Because now you're back performing. Now you're back writing songs. Is that process easier when you're in that state of happiness?
Not necessarily. The writing songs was actually easier when I was depressed.
So you could draw from the problems of your real life at that time?
Yeah, it was a catharsis, a way to work through stuff. And now, I try and write songs, and they just come out like goofy, because it's just like, oh yay, I'm happy. Woo, woo.
Oh yeah, here comes Pollyanna with another song she just wrote for us. I can see that, so many great songs come out of tragedy, bad experiences in people's lives.
Yeah. So I can still draw from that old stuff, but
it's a fading memory at this point.
Yeah, I don't want to live there.
The book is The Happiness Handbook, a user's manual for living your extraordinary life. Jenn Flaa has been our guest on the program today. If you're going to look that up, that's FLAA. Her website is happiness-handbook.com. Also, Jenn, I understand you've got a meditation CD and an app that's coming out soon as well.
Yeah, right after Christmas.
That's perfect.
That'll help people work through some of those, the angst and anger issues that you have to get through and work out in order to, find your happiness and bliss.
And the book is available, as I said, at Amazon. And you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and kind of get all the information. Jenn, unfortunately out of time. Love to have you back on the program. Much more to talk about. Thank you so much for sharing the story on our program.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome. The book is The Happiness Handbook, and you're listening to This Week in America and the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network.